Good evening and welcome to the Velocity of Now with me, your host, Thomas Sheridan. It is Wednesday, the 4th, I believe it will be when this goes out, of May 2016. So we got through the Walpurgis Night Beltane weekend. I had an awful lot of fun. It was great, and there's a sense of creativity and new projects in the air, and there's a nice kind of calm spring-like element going around. I'm seeing a lot of wild animals. I've seen an amazing amount of mink, stoats, and badgers already outside. So it's like there's definitely more wildlife around now in Ireland than there was even 10 years ago. A lot of this has to do with the fact that basically a lot of land is not being farmed anymore, and the farmers are being paid to let it go back to wilderness. This is it's a double-edged sword, this one, this strategy. On one level, it's probably good that a lot of farmland does go back to wilderness, particularly areas that are in highlands and on mountains, because otherwise they'd be still being pumped full of fertilizers and phosphates and nitrates. And the countryside tends to be quite a noisy place. People think countryside is quiet, but the countryside is actually a gigantic factory for the production of food. And there's all kinds of machinery that have to come and work the countryside. It's an eternal battle against nature that farmers have to do. So the EU is paying farmers not to farm anymore. So in some ways, it's a good thing because wildlife is coming back, and the country is returning to what it used to be before mass agriculture. And that's not the end of the world anyway, but that's also farming skills are being lost. So the country can't really feed itself if anything ever happened in terms of a catastrophe or a major world war. Well, it could feed itself, but it wouldn't be as efficient as it used to be. You wouldn't have as many people able to understand the land as you did before. So like everything else, I guess it's a double-edged sword, and I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I quite like the fact that the countryside is going wild, and I think maybe I'm not like advocating depopulation in the countryside, but the Irish countryside is horrifically overpopulated and has been for a long time, and not even properly populated with small villages like you have in England and lots of empty countryside. There's literally a house every 100 yards. The rural Ireland is really a gigantic American style suburb with bad roads. That's really what it is. And it's not a proper countryside in that sense. And it's certainly not a living countryside. One of the things the farmers and rural advocacy groups go on about is that this move away from mass agriculture in the countryside will kill the culture of the countryside. But there is no culture in the countryside, and there hasn't been ever since they've all had cars and they drive to shopping malls, and that's all long gone. This actually, if anything, it brings the countryside back to where it should be, and where it could actually be a real asset in terms of a natural environment, rather than a giant house every 100 meters with 3 cars in the front yard, and they don't know the neighbors because they drive 3 miles to one shopping mall and the neighbors drive 10 miles to another supermarket. And there is no rural development in that sense. There is in the small villages and the towns. So it's like I said, mixed feelings about it. But even so, you're seeing lots of beautiful growth, lots of buds coming on trees, and the birds are out in force, and the days are getting longer. So it's definitely very, very nice at the moment. It's also the end of that 99 lunar cycle that I identified, which began in 2008, crossover 2009, where there was big changes in many people's lives, and I've been following the following the data on that for a very long time. And it definitely seems to be something to it, this 7-year itch kind of thing. And we're entering into a new cycle. So all that was before is gone, and all that is now is new. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not better, it's not worse. It's just different. New trajectories, new tangents, and new realities. And this was brought home to me very recently, when for the first time in my life I saw someone develop a photograph in a photographer's studio, and I've never seen that. And it with the alchemy, I never realized how spiritual traditional photography is, and I mean that in a very real sense. When you're sitting there in a room with the red light bulb on, and you have water running and everything, and the sound of water running, and you have this sheet of paper put into a little bath, and all of a sudden this image appears in front of you. It truly is like magic. It truly is alchemical, and I totally get why. So even this age of phenomenal digital photography and that being in everyone's hand, why large numbers of people still take traditional photography courses, for the simple reason that it does have this alchemical engagement with it. Now, this kind of sets us up the idea of, when we see that in vinyl as well, as opposed to digital music, there's the resurgence of vinyl. There's now new vinyl pressing plants opening up all over the world, which is remarkable. And we saw that the Kindle has flopped, and bookshops with real books in them are taking off again. There's definitely something in terms of value, and people valuing ideas and valuing culture and valuing even products that's coming back. Even cassette tapes, analog cassette players and cassette tapes are coming back. It's really amazing. Now, I think one of the reasons, talking to the photographer who was showing me this developing process, is he says the mistakes in the process are often create the most beautiful magic. And this is why the digital world is a problem, because it's zeros and ones, switches on and off. It's flawless. It cannot produce mistakes. If it does, the whole system shuts down. But it's really, in terms of its own integrity, it remains solid. It's simply just channel switching on and off. Whereas if it's in an analog waveform system, which is much closer to what magic is, there's a kind of a musical symphonic aspect to the flow of information, ideas, and culture. And within that flux between the two parts of the sine wave, that's when you get the magic. That's when you get the absolute magic. And this is where I'm only really interested in going forward. Whatever I talk about or deal with from now on, I'm definitely going to have it with an overlay of this idea of analog magic, and the idea of magic being a product of the analog world and black magic being a product of the digital world. That's not to say I'm a Luddite. I'm against digital technology. I'm actually very much a fan of a lot of technology, but we must not let it rule our lives. And this is where the issue is. The idea of the magic ruling our lives. The black magic of the digital magi. It's pretty obvious to anyone now that we're heading towards a transhumanist future, leading to a post-humanist future, that where humans will be basically merging with the machine, or reality, the machine will be merging with us to a point. But when it reaches the full post-humanist level, the machine will absorb the man and the woman, the soul, the consciousness, whatever you want to do with it. This is what they want, because this is the best business model for them going forward. It's the ultimate form of socialism. It's the ultimate machine society. And if you don't perform, they essentially just switch you off at the wall. You're becoming a robot. Now, I've been paying careful attention, and I hope you will be too in times to come, that they're going to be making the move to the real thing that's going to get us into the transhumanist. See, they have to get us in the same way they got us into commercialization. They have to use the same Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud, manipulation of our securities, our insecurities, our inclinations, our fears. Now, a big one they've used for the transhumanist thing is that you will live forever. If you go to websites like The Singularity, they all talk about how humans there's something wrong with us because we only live to be 70 or 80 years. We're a defective model. All of nature, in fact, is defective. And this is also ties in with the atheist idea. God doesn't exist. There's no kind of spiritual dimension to the universe. It's all defective, and only human science and scientism can fix this. This idea that this defect, this sort of like fault that's built into reality, this is just another version of original sin. In Christianity, the idea of original sin is the most appalling thing about Christianity, is that it tells people that they are sinners and they're polluted at their consciousness, their subconscious psychic soul level from the moment they come out of their mother's womb, and only by involving themselves in the Christian rite can they restore this defect. Now, this is exactly the same thing that they're using with the transhumanists, that human beings are basically a defective model, and the only way to fix us is to remove that defect by technologically upgrading us. So that should give you a hint of where they really want to go with this. They want to take it into a religious dimension, because that will be the final nail in the coffin for our current human version. They want the robot, but the robot won't enter the machine unless it has all the things it needs in there. So first we have now sex robots. Sex is a huge trigger in human behavior. Sex causes war. Sex is about business. It's about getting money. It's all sexual. It's all a reproductive drive. They now have all the sexual robots, all these sex robots who are basically digital electronic prostitutes. And they're getting more and more realistic, and they're now even providing child ones for pedophiles, as revolting as that is. But this we're dealing with just business. When you're dealing with psychopaths, it's just business. Don't take it personally. It's just business. And so that's what that's all about. And so they've got the people sexually attracted. First, online porn is the beginning of that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with pornography per se, in terms of, I mean, I know there's exploitation in the industry and things like that, but I've nothing against erotica. I mean, when they dug up Pompeii, they found erotica and hardcore porn all over the walls of the houses. There's nothing wrong per se with that kind of thing. But you now have a generation with incredibly easy access to it through the internet. Young kids from an early age, young boys especially. And so they're already in a sexual relationship as they're entering puberty with the digital djinn, the binary code magi's, because sex to them is not like a girl in school or a girl they might meet when they're older. Sex to them is the TV on the screen and nothing else. And real women, and it's not the fault of men, so don't you feminists be blaming men for this. It's the fault of psychopaths who run the whole thing. The men are then applying standards as they reach into society of pornography on top of real women. So they think, and it's not their fault again, that they think that a sexual relationship is exactly what it should be on a porn film. Yeah, all the scenarios and all the things involved in that. They're seeing things like their stepmothers as women they can have sex with, because the sex on the videos is a lot of a stepmother. It's always been a stepmother kind of theme, banging your hot stepmother while the dad is out working. You're going to see that normalized as well as other things. But because of legal and social and cultural constraints, you have things like fleshlights and all these other sex toys that are becoming more and more like a robot woman that will then provide these releases of adrenaline and energy into the man. Now, if that's hooked up to the internet, we all know that energy is actually fed then into the system. You see, I believe that the actual internet, especially with the development of cloud software, it will become sentient, and I mean really sentient at one point, because there's so much psychic energy now being poured into it on this vast global network that it's developing into a brain of its own, but it's still got basic cognition. But there was a time when human beings had a basic brain. It was just basically neural pathways, and it took certain things, usually catastrophes or usually changes in climate or changes in social models, that caused the cognition to improve and expand in terms of delivering consciousness. Well, the same thing is going to happen with the internet. It will suddenly find itself coming alive, and there'll be nothing we can do about it then, because it'll just be like HAL 9000 in Stanley Kubrick's A 2001: A Space Odyssey. The brain is alive. Now, this is not a doom scenario. This is my show, and my work is a philosophical discussion with the audience. So this is what I'm supposing may happen, and it may not happen that way, but let's throw these ideas out there. At least people are thinking about them, because there's two ways of looking at this. The more we pay attention towards them, the more we can accidentally manifest them. But the more we pay attention to them in a critical way, the less we will manifest them. Like, I'll give you an example in the magic again. All these truthers, all terrified of the all-seeing eye, or the pyramid with the eye on the top, were charging the symbol. They were absolutely charging it by saying, it's a satanic symbol, turn your eye away from it, man. They were actually charging it. They were making it more powerful. In reality, if you want to nullify something, you say, oh, it's an occult symbol and that's the enemy, and you walk away. Then you're not charging it. But you're aware of what it is. You understand? You're aware of where it comes from, what its purpose is to harvest energy, but you don't give it any energy. Therefore, you've taken away its power over you, and you now have a power over it. So I'm asking you, those of you who are going to be monitoring the social changes in the future, do that the same way. So if you see a music video that's full of like esoteric stuff, know that it is real, it is there, but it's not done to promote any school of magic. And the people in the music video are not magicians who are trying to spellbind you for occult purposes. They're using these techniques to get your money, take your money. That's all they're doing. It's just to get your money. The awareness is a responsibility. You have to be responsible. Like you've always got to keep yourself inside the magic. You see, when you enter into the world of magic, and this is what my audience are now involved in, whether you know it or not, but you're now all involved in a magical lifestyle, because I've been opening up your mind and your awareness to this layer of reality that you either feared before, didn't understand before, or had been explained very badly. You're now in it. If you've been listening to the last 2 or 3 episodes of this show, you're now in this world. And it's a good thing. But you've got to stay inside the magic circle. And the magic circle is not literally drawing the circle around yourself. The magic circle is the circle of psychic integration that allows you to understand what's happening so it doesn't dominate you. Allows you to understand what's happening so it doesn't dominate you. Doesn't mean it's not happening. You're not the same thing as ignoring it. You have awareness to it, but you do not have attachment to it. So this is another powerful thing in magic, is the idea of attachment. You want something, you create a sigil, you put it away. You put all the energy and the effort in there during the creation of the sigil. Once it's done, you walk away. You do not go, this thing better work. I hope this thing works. If it doesn't work, I'll kill myself. If it doesn't work, I'll give up on magic. It better work. I so want this so badly. No, you have to have detachment. You have to have detachment, because every time you do that, you're allowing the mechanics of the universe to derail itself. Let the universe do its job. You made a request. When you order a meal at a restaurant, you don't follow the waiter into the restaurant to make sure the waiter and the chef are preparing your meal correctly. You just let it happen. You just let it happen. Well, it's the same thing with the creation of a magical idea. You let it happen, but you don't follow the process obsessively. You do not follow the process obsessively. You have detachment. So when we're embarking on this magical life, and say, like what I've been doing lately, I've been paying careful attention to websites such as Wired and things like that, the Singularity, and also mainstream papers. You won't learn anything from alternative media. You learn from mainstream media, because the truth to everything in life is the white space between the words, not the words themselves. So I'm looking for markers, signals, identifiers that may suggest we're being moved towards a religiosity surrounding technology, and in particular cyberspace, digital world, and so on. They've got to create the redeemer of the internet. The technochrist must rise. There has to be a god, because they know that they can get us in there in every other way, which they have more or less. The last door in is to get everyone involved to actually give up their souls for technology would be the belief that they were attaining a kind of a psycho-spiritual rapture by entering in with the machine, going into the machine, but only following the God that calls you there. We're already seeing, and we have been seeing for a while, elements of this religiosity with some technological companies. For instance, Google, do no evil. That's like their version of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not do that. That's already used that idea as a kind of a religious, spiritual, dogmatic code. Do no evil. It sounds very appealing to people. I'm involved in good. If Google does no evil, then my participation with Google, this is what subconsciously the plebs here, is a good thing. It's the good work. It's the good work of God. So that's a step towards that. Apple already has basically pilgrimages and fanatics, flagellants. These people who say outside Apple stores in sub-degree temperatures. You ever notice they have the Apple stores always release the products in winter? So they'll have as many tents as possible outside and as many people wearing heavy parka jackets going, oh, I'm so cold, but I'm going to get that iPhone 7. I want to be the first one to get the iPhone 7. That's a flagellant. They're suffering for the technology. That's what that is. They're pilgrims. They're like the pilgrims in the Middle Ages who had a pot to piss in and had no money or anything, and yet they would walk from southern France to an obscure cathedral in the north of Germany through the winter because they couldn't do it in the summer or the autumn because they were needed to work as serfs in the fields to gather in the harvest or to plow the field, but they could do it in winter, and so they would go in winter, and that's the same thing that Apple use when they launch a new product. They're always in the cold. Same reason why you have the Black Friday is always on a cold day in America. This is the spell. This is the witchcraft. This is the flagellants. They're flagellants. When you see the Black Friday and they charge through the doors and you see them dancing on each other's heads and people nearly fainting and screaming and dying, that's they're flagellants. They're religious flagellants who are paying penance in order to serve the corporate master. So Apple have done that. Apple have always used religious type imagery from day one, and religious type. That's because that Steve Jobs is an absolute beast. That guy, and people look up to some kind of great genius. He was a horrible man. And when he died, they even had the Apple candle, a candle inside the Apple logo, and all these people online, like all in a state of psychosis, weeping over Steve Jobs and Apple. He's just a corporate identity, just a scumbag. He's a corporate scumbag, and yet to them, he was a religious figure. And you also always have the dualities. And in black magic, you'll always have the duality. You can always tell a black magician from a white magician, because a black magician does not make you. I'm sorry, a white magician, or should I say, a magician, does not make you choose between good or bad, left or right, one or the other. A black magician always does. Pepsi, Coke, Blur, Oasis, Rolling Stones, Beatles, Apple, Microsoft. They'll always make you choose because it feeds into the energy of both. You heard me talk about that last week. Nothing wrong with that. And it's also can be a good thing too if both people have their hearts in the right place, but can pretend to have a duality, a conflict or a schism. They will focus all the energy on them for good reasons. So you'd have like this. I spoke about the Alan Moore, Grant Morrison schism that was going on. Well, that was not to serve any corporate agenda to make you pick one corporation over the other. It basically got everyone interested in magic. And great stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. So you're in the magic circle, so you have to remain detached. And as you have detached, you develop wisdom. Because you look at people outside the Apple store and you don't see morons who are desperate to get the latest commercial products because they're so commercial. What you're seeing are deeply religious people. Amazing as that is, you're not seeing corporate muppets who are obsessed with materialism. You're seeing the exact opposite. You're seeing almost almost fanatical spiritual devotion. They're not there because they're obsessed with commerciality. They're there because they are attempting to achieve a sense of transubstantiation with the device that they want from Apple. And that's why they end up loving them. That's why they develop loving relationships with their iPhones. Many Apple iPhone owners actually are physically and emotionally in love with their iPhone. This is the holy grail for corporations, to get people to adore their product in a religious way. You remember the Coke ads from the early 70s. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. And you'd have all these catatonic, moony looking Scientology types on a hill singing this. They were creating a religiosity surrounding caramel and fizzy water, and did it very successfully in order to power the hypersigil of the Coca-Cola logo, which is the red and white script. McDonald's did the same. Now, McDonald's is a tremendous one. People say Ronald McDonald is scary. That's the point. Ronald McDonald is scary, but he's never associated really directly with the food. He's associated with the children. Have you noticed that? Ronald McDonald is for the little kids. Now, little kids generally don't like clowns and they don't like Ronald McDonald. But Ronald McDonald plays on the fear of clowns and also the fact that he's associated with things like children dying of cancer. This is real black magic stuff we're going into here. Like the Ronald McDonald house. I remember like watching McDonald's ads back in the 80s, and you'd have a little kid's handwriting. Dear Ronald McDonald, my name is Cody, and I live in Wisconsin, and I'm 8 years old, and I have cancer. That kind of thing. And you're shocked. But McDonald's gives you the devil, and it gives you the God, right? So the devil is the Ronald McDonald fear. See, remember, they're always aiming for your subconscious, right? The fear of that. And the relief from that is the toy in the Happy Meal. Da 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 da. I'm loving it. The same with the cancer. Ronald McDonald is the angel of death. These children go to Ronald McDonald House not to be cured, they go there to die. So Ronald McDonald is the angel of death. So that's why you have images of death all over Christian churches, because it plays on the fear of death, and the irrationality of that draws people to the product. It draws them to it. It's very similar to a kind of a sympathetic magic, where in the old days you had this expression, money for old rope, where people used to soak up the blood of murdered prisoners or people who were hanged or decapitated, because they believed that had magical power. That blood, and I believe it actually probably did, and so did the ropes that hung. In fact, in ancient, so say about 1,000 years ago, the main magicians in Europe were not the Roman gypsies, but they were the Finns. The Finnish magicians and maguses used to travel through northern Europe selling magic rope. And the rope often had its power from strangling people, so the strangulation of people, and the rope had magic power. And that's where that came on, money for old rope. That's how, in the old days, in this part of the world, executioners and hangmen were not paid a salary. They were given the rope. They were given the rope of the person they hanged. They would slice it up into small segments and then auction it off as magical talismans to whoever wanted it. It's the same kind of thing with the Ronald McDonald thing. It's like yes, Ronald McDonald gives you cancer. He's warning you that McDonald's food will kill you. It even has a place where children go to die from cancer. But you willingly walked into that door because you wanted two things. You were spellbound by the hypersigil of the McDonald's logo. That was the first thing. Spellbound by that. And you wanted the tie in the Happy Meal. Happy Meal. It almost even sounds Happy Meal, Happy Meal. Keep saying that. And it almost sounds like some kind of like ancient Aramaic word. Happy Meal, da 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 da. And you're spellbound. And you go in there. And now McDonald's, when I first tasted McDonald's as a kid, I thought it was horrible. and I still hate it. It smells like underarms, and it tastes like underarms. The only thing they ever made that I actually liked was they had those little potato kind of hash brownie things, and that was and that was about, you're talking about 30 years ago when I last had them, and I've never liked it. Never liked the atmosphere of the place. Didn't like the food, and I like burgers and I like French fries, but I don't like their stuff. It's horrible. I won't eat. It's like people go in there not to be nourished in terms of food. They go in there to be raped. They want to be raped, like the Illinois in the Time Machine. H.G. Wells' Time Machine. They want to be eaten and murdered and eaten by the Morlocks. We want that. We want destruction because there's built into our subconscious the idea that destruction creates life. So if we are basically a pleb in the suburbs, our lives are pretty shitty. We subconsciously know that the more McDonald's we eat and the more cheap lager we eat and the more cigarettes we smoke, that we'll kill ourselves faster, so we'll be reborn again. So corporations have been using the idea of the willing debt, the willing sacrifice, having a magical charge that allows you to be reborn in a certain way. Been working for a long time. The rebirthed aspect is the talisman of the Happy Meal toy and that kind of thing. You'll come back. The iPhone, we're queuing for the iPhone. There's a video on YouTube of, I think it takes place in Rochester, New York, or Buffalo, New York, and again in the middle of winter, where Popeye's fried chicken has some kind of special deal, and the Popeye's chicken ran out in the first 5 minutes, and so people were driving up in their cars to get their Popeye fried chicken, and the camera was interviewing them, and they're going, "My kids, how am I going to feed my children? Cook them a fucking meal, you dumb bitch. How am I going to feed my family?" There's this kind of thing. And oh, I'm a man. I came here and I was going to buy myself some of my dinner. What am I going to do for my dinner now? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that they cannot think outside the corporate paradigm. There are days I do wonder if there's about maybe a few thousand actual human beings on this planet and the rest are all kind of meat golems. There really are days I do think that. The lack of reality out there is astounding, and it's always been like this. It's not getting worse. We've always been like this. It's just that in the past it was religions that had this control over us. Now it's corporations. There's no difference between a serf walking 100 miles across Germany in the Middle Ages to see the finger bone of a saint. There's no difference between that and, an IT executive or an IT specialist sleeping outside rough on the streets outside a McDonald's, an Apple store in order to get the latest iPhone. It's the same thing. He is no more wise than the serf, the pox-ridden serf from the Middle Ages. When you strip it down to our basic core, you can take away everything. You can take away the money, you can take away the accent, you can take away the social status, their employment, the whole ego overlay of each encapsulated skin of everybody. And we're stripped down to the basic impulses. But these basic impulses developed as a way of surviving. Initially, they were survival tools when the world was harsh. And what happened then was when life became easier, they were re-engineered towards acquiring desirable things. So basically human beings are sex and religion, food, and the need for a purpose to their lives. And then you can break that down again. Both sex and both religion are to avoid debt. Both of them are about avoiding debt. Sex is procreation. but it's also a symbol of youth and being young, and it's not something you associate with old people. And religion is about the belief that there's something beyond this. But because we are our cognition at the moment is rather limited in terms of our perception of the universe, we can only see the fleeting, shimmering reflections of something beyond the five sense reality. I spoke about that the other week, that we can only see the shadow of the other dimensions. We can't actually see them or get into them because of the condition that we are in terms of our biological cognition. But those of us who have practiced magic are well aware that there's a lot more to it than this walking around like this now. This is just not it. So we don't need religion. In fact, that's why we end up seeing how dangerous religion is, because it's telling people that they won't get any of this magic until they're in a box in the ground, when reality is they can get this magic every day of their lives. Every day of their lives. And this is why that this was as the new way. See, everything develops as in dualities. It's always like a race to the finish. So you had the New Age thing was developing at the same time as the transhumanist thing. So you have the cyberpunks, the cyber magicians, and you had the likes of Terence McKenna and his brother saying that transhumanism was the greatest thing ever. You had the Celestine prophecy. When you read the Celestine prophecy, the last few pages say that mankind's destiny is to merge with the machine and attain immortality. And then you know who was behind the Celestine prophecy. It was the depopulation agenda. And then you get the whole thing, there's too many humans on the earth and all this kind of thing. So the religiosity has been lacking, because New Age spirituality is not religious. It's just not. And neither is, and that's just not going to get people into the machine. You've literally got to get the promised land into the motherboard. So where Moses led his people into the promised land, the future is for a religious leader following the same, just like all cults, following the same path as the Bible. This is why all cults, you see Scientology, you have a crucifix over their headquarters, all follow the Christian model. So all follow the Judeo-Christian model, Judeo-Islamic Christian model, the Middle Eastern Abrahamic model. What's next is, it still hasn't happened yet. I'm looking. That's why we need you, me, and everyone else to start looking, is to pay attention that the digital Christ is coming, or the digital Moses actually will be first. We already have the digital Elijahs who are making the likes of Stephen Hawking, who say that we will all go with the machine in times to come, and there'll be no more sickness and all this kind of thing, and no more debt. We've had that for a long time. So they'd be the prophet Elijahs, right? They can't do this thing overnight. They have to roll over a number of decades, maybe even centuries. Then the next thing you're going to have is, we still haven't got it yet. We're still very early into the process. Is the Moses that brings us to the motherboard land, the promised land, the land of milk and honey, the microchip processor at the center of the motherboard. That's what we'll have next. Now, things like the Mars 1 mission was an early test run of that. Mars 1 mission was pure black magic. It was fantastic to watch because I was literally watching those videos nonstop. Mars 1, in case you don't know, was this plan to have people select a number of people to go to live on Mars and die on Mars. It was a one-way mission. Now, that was never going to happen. But it exposed two things: how stupid educated people are. All these scientists and all these educated people who were all atheists, every last one of them, wanted to go and die on Mars. So it was a death cult to begin with. The soul for people who had no souls. Secondly, there's no difference between leading someone on a one-way death mission to Mars than there is to leading them into sacrificing their body into the machine. You understand? There was a test run. It was a test run to see because they want the right kind of people to go in first, to dive in there first. The Magi have this all figured out. The only way they're ever going to do it is the Bible, which has been the greatest weapon that's ever been used against the human being. they've got to use that to get us into the machine. So we don't have as yet a Moses, but it will be triggered by some kind of crisis. It will be. You're going to see all the religious movements developing, and then you will have literally a Jesus Christ who will be in the module, a Jesus Christ who will be in the Internet of Things. And then people will live their lives with one aspect, and that is to get into the machine, get in there, to get into the machine, because this world will be completely made inhospitable to human beings. Now, you're all listening to this and saying, I'm never going to go into the machine. I'll never do it. I'll never take the chip. I'll never take the chip, right? You don't have to, okay? Because we're dealing with black magicians, they're not going to do it to everyone, because then magic doesn't work. Magic only works when the target acquiesces to the request of the magician. Therefore, when the magician says, can I have a volunteer from the audience? The volunteer has willingly stepped up on that stage. So that's an immediate disclaimer that you can say, I was lured in, I was lied into it, I was deceived into it. No, you walked up to the fucking stage. Magicians use lures. In the old days, and the stage magic, when people smoked in there, the magician would look around the audience to see who was chain smoking, because people who chain smoke are very susceptible to suggestion. So he would look for someone who was on the audience who was chain smoking, and he would I could tell you beforehand who would be on the stage. Then the magician always has the sexy assistant, the pretty girl who's half naked, whom he symbolically kills during the rituals, like sawing them in half and making them disappear. But she's also a sexual lure. You rarely get women going up. When a magician used to call in the old days, can I have a volunteer from the audience? Rarely was it a woman unless he specifically asked for a woman. It was a guy being led up there with high suggestibility traits and a boner in his pants, because he was turned on by the girl on the stage and he wanted to be next to her. But then what happens then is a humiliation ritual ensues, where he's put into a state through hypnosis of a kind of dissociation. And that dissociation creates one part from which the magician can humiliate, make him bark like a dog, make him do whatever he wants. And then because you can now come out of trance when they click 1, 2, 3 and snips his fingers, and the guy comes out of the trance, the guy can say, the guy has no memory that he was barking like a dog on the stage next to this sexy magician's assistant who he wanted to be with. He has no memory of that. So therefore, the dissociation caused by those two states of consciousness have not been a result of any, shall we say, compromise of his dignity or his manhood. And then he's rewarded always then, but with a kiss on the cheek by the sexy assistant of the magician. You see, stage magic came from ritual magic. It came from it. Except it went for more base human things like sexual urges, impulsivity, fears of death, fears of violence, like the song The Woman in the Half. But it comes basically from the same ideas. Basically, there's always the same format. And the ones who are, it will not work on someone like me. Like, if I go to sort of a seminar and there's some kind of new age woman on the stage, she says something like, everybody stand up and dance and let your body go free and all this stuff, you will never see me standing up. At AV6 last year, some woman there had in the auditorium had a routine going on where she said, everyone stand up and dance, and I was the only one who didn't stand up. And I was getting dirty looks from people. And I was getting dirty looks from people because I knew some of them were looking at me and going, fuck me, Sheridan is out with us again. Why? Same reason I didn't fall for Russell Brand, because I know about magic and I know about suggestibility. And it wasn't that I had anything against the woman getting us all up and dance. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was giving a positive message. But I won't do it. I won't do it. I won't do anything. I'm not comfortable with protecting my psychic integration. Absolutely, and so should you. And this is why they have all them in the churches with the one hand in the air, waving, Jesus is the light, Jesus is the hope. Well, they're all slaves. They're all hypnotized slaves. All of them. Now, if you want to do it like at, like even in pop music, and like the rappers going, put your hands in the air, like just don't care. That's all the same thing, right? If you want to do it, but in 99% of cases, they're not doing it. And that's why they're also holding up their scrying screens, their mobile devices at concerts. They don't actually watch the band anymore. They scry it through the scrying screen because they need a digital djinn to almost be the middleman to filter it out before them. But they're doing it because everyone else is doing it. That's been going on for a long time. You remember that movie A Star Is Born where what's that bitch's name? Barbara Streisand. Can we put the lighters in the air and light the lighters up for what's his name? 1,000. Come on. 1,000 points of light, George Bush Sr. See how deep this shit is? You see how big this stuff is? You have to be a firewall of your own existence. Now, I'm telling you, don't do anything unless you want to do it. You don't do nothing because there's never ever a happy result in that. It never works out. Once it goes wrong, it's like this. It's like there's a funny meme I saw the other day, and it's a picture of a guy, and she goes, "Well, she broke up with me, but you can't unsuck this dick." I thought that was that. I mean, it's funny and as offensive as that is, it's actually a lot of truth to that. It's very profound in its own way because you can't go back on it. You can't go back on it. So the best thing is to not to do it in the first place. You must protect all your energy, no matter what. You've got to protect it. Now, you share your information and you share your knowledge like I'm sharing with you as a gift. Now, what I'm giving you, I'll never be financially adequately compensated for it, but that's not why I'm doing it. It's an exchange of energy. It's an exchange of energy. If I can get paid for this, if I get paid for doing my work, I'm very happy. If I don't get paid, I see it as an investment to maybe getting paid further down the line. It's an investment in space and time. Through my goodwill. Paying it forward is a wonderful idea. It's one of the most best ideas that's come out in recent years. But it's also, unfortunately, an idea that can be taken advantage of. That you never get paid eventually. Your energy is just sucked. That movie, Nightcrawler, is brilliant. If you want to see the best movie ever made about psychopaths in recent years, watch the movie Nightcrawler. It's about a guy who realizes he can make money by going to accident scenes and selling the news footage to TV stations, but he's a psychopath. And then he decides that not only is he going to do that, and he starts making money from it, but he's going to arrange it so not only is he the only one in town, the only one, because he's a psychopath, but he's also going to make sure that he's going to actually arrange. So when he's aware of death and murders and violence coming, he's going to have the camera there. He doesn't care about saving the lives of anyone. He just wants the fucking footage so he can sell it on. Just business. He wants absolute domination of the market because his attitude is that it's just business. Don't take it personally, and he knows about people are going to get murdered and killed, and he lets cops and stuff walk in, and other people walk to their deaths once he has the video camera rolling and he gets the footage he's all set. And the film, I'm not going to do a spoiler for you, but the end of the film is very profound, where he makes this kind of like the speech that he's like this great leader of this team of video footage. It's like a cult, put it that way. And so that film is very important to watch because that's how the black magician works, right? That's how where the white magician, now the black magician works that way. The white magician gives the stuff out for free and it's never used. No one else has ever compromised or manipulated in order to get that out there. So no one is actually, like a black magician, if he wants to buy something, he'll go to an old lady's house, beat her up, find whatever money he can find in the old lady's house. He kills her. That's tough shit. Gets her money and goes buys it. A white magician works and gets a job, or makes a deal with someone. I'll work for so long, and you don't have to pay me now, but you can pay me that product I want. That's what white magic is. See, that's what magic is. That simple. That simple. It's a difference in black magic exploits people, lies to people, deceives them. White magic gives it for free with no understanding or no, like the sigil at the beginning, no attachment that I better get rewarded for this. None of that. Just an assumption that that it's done in good faith, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll move on to the next thing. If it does work, wonderful. The lack of attachment is how the spell works, not the actual pursuit of it. Where the black magician is obsessed with attachment, often and does get good results. However, if you have a conscience, you don't use people and discard them. You just don't. You don't operate that way. No one does that way. If you have a conscience, you do white magic. If you don't have a conscience, you become a corporate scumbag and you just use and manipulate. You become a cult leader, or you become a TV evangelist, or you become like the guy in it's just a user. Now that doesn't mean everyone that goes down the black magic route is a psychopath. You see, Crowley, when he was talking about the Kabbalistic tree of life, he said the absolute ascension to the path at the top is black magic. What he was saying was you go from A to Z or 0 to 100 without honoring or validating the paths in between. You will get there to the top faster than anyone else. But it's like Jimmy Durante said: be careful of those that you, be careful how you treat people on the way up, because they're the ones you're going to need on the way down. And that's what Crowley was saying. That's magic again. Crowley was saying again, if you go straight up the Kabbalistic tree of life in order to attain without invoking the will to the stages in between, you're imposing black magic. Black magic works, we know that, but black magic also comes with an enormous price. It has the danger to go. Black magic works instantaneously, but also falls apart instantaneously as well. White magic is work, slog, the will, get out there with no attachment, with no fixity of purpose, just the understanding, the intention, with the work, with the labor, with the engagement to get there. To get there, there's no other way to do it properly. And all the problems in this world are caused by black magic. I'm going to fucking screw him before he screws me. Oh yeah, talking shit about people behind their back, and then calling up on the phone and going, "Hey, bro, let's do something together." That kind of thing. I saw enough of that shit in Wall Street to last me a lifetime. That's the same thing, but that's hard word for disaster. Doesn't matter. I mean, you see what's happening with David Miscavige at Scientology at the moment, right? Now, Scientology, like all cults, it's all black magic, but it's black magic in a state of absolute chaos. They're the ultimate chaos black magicians. But it's an absolute chaos, and this chaos feeds. Now, David Miscavige's father has written a book about what a piece of shit, crazy lunatic this fanatic, this Miscavige guy from Scientology is. And then, of course, like all cults, instead of ignoring it or anything like that, or trying to explain that, well, maybe we should change our ways and become a better organization, you always can tell a cult because it attacks. Like you can always tell a smear campaign from a psychopath, and go right in. A cult and a psychopath they respond with a smear campaign. They don't sit back and say, fuck me, this would be a better way to deal with this than this shit. Let's see if we can get out of this without not looking like complete assholes. The reptilian brain of both don't understand that. So they go directly in, and then at the same time they imply the sob stories, the pity me stories. So David Miscavige is running a massive smear campaign against his father because David Miscavige is a victim. Now, the father is being portrayed as a disgusting person. That's actually even in some Scientology propaganda videos, a disgusting pig, they're calling him. And every little thing he ever did is, as usual, with psychopaths and with cults, is they blow it up into something it wasn't. They make it massive. So you don't recognize the initial offense, the initial thing. So you forget the truth of it. You see, smear campaigns are very, very interesting. People are almost turned on by smear campaigns. They don't care if it's good or bad. It's just they just need it for their cognitive dissonance. And black magicians know this. Like Misavage is a brilliant black magician. There's no doubt about that. And so Misavage and all these fanatics and loonies in Scientology are all giving these statements saying that his father, Ron, I think his name, was a horrible man. He was a useless human being who's failed at everything in his life. Yet this guy was the top musical director in Scientology for decades, at the highest level of the organization. If he was a loser and a failure all his life, why did they tolerate him at the very top for so long? I'll tell you why. Here's why. He was the best. He was good. And that talent is what made him jump ship from Scientology, because integrity will come out in all these situations. And they know that. And rather than that he's a piece of shit who's failed and he's a loser jump ship, what an unperson, whatever they call him, is a word from an ex-agent or something, usual cult lingo bollocks. They don't look at their organization and say, well, let's try and make it better for the future. They follow the same path, because this Scientology is doomed. All cults are doomed. All black magic is doomed, because that shit only you bury enough shit, everyone will smell it, and it's only making people want to see Scientology in a more sinister way. Where if David Misavage had stood up and said, "It's unfortunate that my father has done this. I still love him. He's still my father, and maybe one day we can be reunited together. It's unfortunate he feels this way about Scientology, but it's a difficult thing for me to deal with, my father doing this." He would have won enormous amounts of respect, and people wouldn't be so looking at critically at Scientology, going, fucking cult, look how they behave. They run smear campaigns against a guy that they thought was hot shit until he decided he didn't want to be involved anymore. But because Misavage is a black magician, after a while, the black magic and the black magician mentality becomes completely hardwired into the motherfuckers, and they know no other way to live. And so the first thing he stands up and does is attack his father. And what does that make? Millions of people say Scientology is a cult. Fucking, I never trust these bastards. Misavage is stupid on that level, because the black magic makes you stupid. It makes you destructive. Because you've been manipulating people for so long, you think everyone can be manipulated, because you'd have no concept that outside of the cult there's another world altogether. Where if Misavage had made a big press conference and said, "I love my father, I'm heartbroken by what happened, I really, really hope that we can be friends again one day," everyone would say, "Hey, look, Scientology isn't so bad after all." But the black magician never fucking figures that out. Never. And that's why black magic fails. Now, the father played an absolute fucking blinder. He said, "David used to be a wonderful, sweet kid." Immediately, people are going to say, the father's right. The father's a good guy. Where the son goes, "My father's an ex-human being. He's a disgusting pig. He's the enemy, and I'm turning all my followers against him." Normal, healthy people will go, "What a fucking dick, cult leader." The desire to use magic and use magical processes in order to defend yourself in a time of crisis is a much bigger thing in the world than people fully know. I mean, we know that the Third Reich, I've written a book on it, Walpurgis Night Volume 1, and I'm hoping to write more about that in the future. We know that the Third Reich were very involved in this stuff. They say they weren't, and you have the neo-Nazi apologists today who say it was a minor, it was fucking huge magic and occult in the Third Reich. There was nothing else to it. The National Socialists were a black magic circle which dabbled in politics. That's what they were. They were a black magic occult circle that dabbled in politics. That's all they were. They were not a political party that dabbled in magic, black magic. They were a black magic group that dabbled in politics. That's what they were. Nothing else to them. We had on the other side, you had the British were actually doing things like invoking magical archetypes. One of the most famous and more impressive posters of World War II is the one during the Battle of Britain where they had a gigantic statue of King Arthur standing atop a gigantic image of King Arthur standing atop the white cliffs of Dover, facing the Nazi onslaught. That's powerful shit. The British had much better magicians than they had Dion Fortune working directly for them. People like uh, Dennis Wheatley and Peter Fleming, and these people all knew their shit inside out. And they were culturalists as well. They were cultural magicians as well as actually aware of how the occult worked. Where the Nazis were just basically hiring lunatics, David Miscavige types of German black occult organizations. They didn't do it properly. The British were much better. The anti-propaganda stuff that they would drop. Flyers. Every speech Hitler made, they would do satirical bardic magic, and they would drop flyers on Germany as they were bombing them with these like messages. Like there was a famous one where when Germany had conquered most of Europe, when National Socialists had conquered most of Europe, Hitler made a speech, and the title of the speech was "What we have, we hold," meaning what the territory we have, we hold. And genius bardic magicians in the British propaganda wing brought out a flyer that had Hitler holding a tiny little penis between us, an erect penis that was tiny between his thumb and his two fingers, a little tiny dick, a only little dick. What we have, we hold. And it's just so funny, but that's magic too. That undid the spell. The Germans never ever. Oh, the Germans had terrible. The Nazis had terrible cultural defense magic. They had like a jazz band that was like, you listen to the lyrics, they were like some kind of swing jazz band that did Aryan jazz. And that's funny enough by itself. And the guy is going, the guy is singing over the music, going, another war, another prophet, another Jewish business trick, this kind of thing, like stupid, really childish, and then no Negro will play in our band except, that kind of thing, stupid. Where if they had like done funnier lyrics, like making fun of Churchill and Chamberlain and the rest of them, it would have been much funnier. It would have been more powerful. But against it was childish. The black magicians don't have a good wit, just that the cults don't have a good wit. You must develop your wit. You must develop your bardic aspects to make fun of them when you're under attack. When you're under attack, you make fun and that of the black magicians, because the black magicians, like the psychopaths, they cannot get the humor right. They cannot get it right. It always looks stupid. It always looks what should be funny. It's like that kind of thing, where the really good bardic magician will say one or two things, and people will fall around pissing themselves laughing. English language is very, very good for that. German doesn't lend itself to that. Doesn't lend itself well to that so much, and that's why John Dee was instrumental in a lot of the creation of English, as were Marlowe and that time of Shakespeare under the Elizabethan court, because they knew that they had to weaponize and bring forth a magical language, a magical syntax. And English was taken. That's why they took so much of the Germanic aspects out and made it into a new language. Where why did you think they call Shakespeare the Bard, for fuck's sake? The Bard. See, stuff's everywhere. What really gives white magic the advantage over black magic is the beauty of it. That's why it's called the art. It really is an art, where in black magic it's a smash and grab. It doesn't have the same poetic realization that comes with it. It expands beautifully when it's done with white magic. When you do real magic and not the dark stuff, the rituals, the creative effort to get there, it's almost a saga which unfolds in real time. I was looking over my notes the other day, speaking of magical rituals, I was looking over my notes the other day for an article I did for a magazine about must be about a decade ago, a newsstand magazine on the Golem of Prague. I've always been interested in the Golem of Prague. I've always been interested in Jewish mysticism, because Jewish mysticism is there's no Christian mysticism, there's no Islamic mysticism. I mean, magic. I mean, there's none of that. That's why the Judaism is the only religion of the three Abrahamic religions that's actually trying to sort itself out. The other two are just on the evangelical crusades. I'm not saying I support any three of them. I'm just saying I've the most time for Judaism because of the Kabbalah and because of the magic. Now, when I was looking over my notes, I found a load of things that I pricked up over the years. Like, I'm always, when I find something from a magazine or anything, and I put it to one side, and I build a little kind of a diary, a journal of that. Like, and I suppose it's a magic book of sorts for that project. Everything I do embarks on a journey, and everything I'm involved in, it becomes I start a new book of what I need in it, but also I have a folder that I keep clippings, and sometimes I clip things that may not initially be relevant directly, but then, like all white magic and all magic practice, in the years later, it unfolds. You know, like you have in movies where at the beginning of the movie, the guy finds, I don't know, a cigarette lighter, and you say, what's that all about? And by the end of the movie, maybe he uses that cigarette lighter to burn a rope that's, you know, he's tied to something that's, you know, tied to a wall or something with, and the lighter becomes, it resolves you're giving the initial insight. What is this? Why is this important? And often it's done not important, but at the end, it turns out that it's also can be a magical device. So suppose he asks somebody for a light in early on the film, and the guy gives him the cigarette lighter. He lights the cigarette and he says, here's your lighter back. He says, I'll keep it, I'm trying to give up. Well, that guy that gave him the cigarette lighter during the film, you see, this is the magical, when you have a magical awareness, you see all these things. During the film, he may get killed, right? At the end of the film, the cigarette lighter that he gave to the guy is used to, say, burn through a rope that eventually frees him from a hostage situation and saves his life. Two things have happened here. First of all, the lighter has become a sigil of a type of a three-dimensional sigil or a talisman that has a magical effect. Secondly, the guy who gave it to him was killed, but he's managed to live beyond the grave through his works, in the form of saving the guy's life by allowing him to burn with the cigarette lighter. James Bond films are full of this. Ian Fleming, again, magician. And so I found this thing, and you know, I'm really interested in paganism and hedonism now more than ever. And I believe that if we can get back to the root of what we were, basically human beings who worship nature, then we can solve a lot of problems in this world. Because then we won't have sectarianism and things like that. No, you know, I can't see human beings fighting over, you know, we are the people of the banana versus we are the people of the orange. That's not going to happen, because it's about the same thing. And so back to the Golem of Prague. The Jews have been in Bohemia, Central Europe, since about 700 AD. Well, that's when the first official town was separated. The pagans met the Jews after the destruction of the Jews after they left Russia through all kinds of political problems, with some of which were cause of their own making. They ended up as refugees in Bohemia. They met with the pagan kings of Bohemia, and they said, these people, they're not harming anyone, they're refugees, and they let them stay. And the Jews prospered in Bohemia and did very well, and until the arrival of Christianity. When the kings of Bohemia converted to Christianity, that's when the Jews were being attacked. Now, I know it's not black and white, but it was specifically when the development of the flagellants came along. The flagellants were Christian violent fundamentalists. They were the ISIS of their time. They not only whipped themselves, but they also beat other people for sexual energy. A lot of it is repressed homosexuality. They attacked the Jews in Prague, and that was hundreds and hundreds. It wasn't until Christianity. Now, when the Jews were building their original synagogue, they found the remains of, now this is brilliant, of an ancient holy building, possibly a pagan or a druidic temple. And they built the new temple, the new synagogue, on top of the druidic ruin. And they said that our Kabbalistic Judaism is the direct lineage of the Druids, basically, more or less, that were there before us. And so that's why they called it the Old New Synagogue, because they believed that this was the new synagogue on top of the old synagogue, and that which they reckon came from the Second Temple. And this ties in with the idea of one basic creed of magic, philosophy, and spirituality that existed everywhere until we had the explosion. The beast from the east came out and smashed everything to pieces. Remember, Kabbalistic Jews are Acquiescence. They're not from the Middle East. They're from Russia. They're from the Russian Turkish hinterlands in the within near Asia. That's where they came from. They were not Middle Easterners. They adopted the Middle Eastern religion. So their ancestors would have been Druids. And so when they founded the synagogue in Prague, they built it upon what they saw as their spiritual ancestors, a Druidic temple. Anyway, the Jews were there for years, on and off. They were hassled, but they became a very prosperous and powerful group in the town, and then living in peace mainly in the old city. Now, I'm going to read you this translation of a Czech manuscript. I know it's a long show tonight. Please bear with me. We're getting somewhere. I will resolve this at the end, just like the guy with the cigarette lighter. And it talks about it's translated by a woman called, a Czech lady by the name of Sonia Marsova. And it's called, and this part just deals with the creation of the golem. Now, the golem is basically the transhumanist robot of Kabbalism. Well, it's not, this is a difference. It's not the transhumanist robot. It's quite different. But it's important to understand what I'm going to read about here in order to get you to towards the end of the show. The creation of the golem. It was the year 1580. A priest called Thaddeus, a fanatical anti-Semite, tried again to disrupt the peace and harmony, and to bring about discord and disharmony, and to evoke new superstitious accusations of blood rituals. Rabbi Lau soon learned about it and raised a question upwards in a dream to find a solution to the problem on how he could fight against the evil enemy. That is completely Druidic. You see, Druids raised the issue up just like Rabbi Lau. They went into a sleep. This is why Kabbalism is so different, folks. Went into a sleep, and in that sleep, he came upon the solution. Druids would do the same thing, often after sacrificing a blood and devouring its flesh. They'd go to a sleep, and in that sleep, while they were protected, they would have the answer. They would raise it up. And here are Kabbalistic Jews, the greatest rabbi, Kabbalist, and scholar, probably easily of the Renaissance, and probably since, in doing, rabbinical, almost Druidic type things within the rabbinical canon, so to speak. You see, this is where you get this stuff you get on this show. You get nowhere else. You're not getting truth or stuff here. You're getting enlightenment and wisdom to make you a better person and have a better life. So Rabbi Lau soon learned about it and raised the question upwards in his dream to find a solution to the problem, how he should fight against the evil enemy. He received the following alphabetically arranged answer in reply: Ata be golem dwerch hakmeram wktisa zedium kaul torfa Israel. And in English that is, you shall create a golem from clay, and may the malicious anti-Semitic mob be destroyed. Rabbi Lau interpreted the line of strange. Now, this is translated from Czech, so he probably didn't say anti-Semitic. He probably said anti-Hebrew at the time. Remember, we're dealing with, this is a modern doc, was from about 20 years ago. It was translated in Czech. It's also, the English is not the best, so that's not my fault. Rabbi Lau interpreted the line of strange words so that he should create a living body from clay with the aid of the letters provided from heaven. They were now one time when I was very ill and dying in hospital, I had um, I had a vision of Hebrew letters inside a gigantic dome that I found myself in during this hallucination, and I also saw demons and Anubis and all this. That's another show for another time. But believe me, I've seen things that would blow your mind. But at the end of this, or shall we say, this vision quest that was caused by a tremendous loss of blood due to an accident, I had witnessed these Hebrew, like the runes, like the Irish Om script, is it's a primordial alphabet in that it's not like it's not an Arabic alphabet or anything other kind of pictogram alphabet. The shapes are based purely on magical insights and on this idea of a language out that coming from another dimension and impinging itself into the shadow of it into this dimension. And that's why the runes and the Om script were charged by the cutting. They both have the same root. The term is the same root. I was looking at an Om script stone in the National Museum in Dublin the other day, and I ran my finger over it just to actually feel where the druids had cut into the stone. It wasn't that they chipped into it, they rubbed their intention into it. And the same thing with the runes, they would cut and scour and scratch the letters in. Well, Hebrew comes from a similar kind of idea. It comes from the phosphine archetypal background, the this the the script of the subconscious. And that's why when I went through this on this magical, should we say, well, traumatic magical experience when I was very, very ill and had these visions, what I saw at the end of the journey was 4 Hebrew letters. And I have another show about that someday. Now, that Hebrew again is that kind of, it comes from the same thing. So he's been told through this dream and these interpretation of letters to form a golem from clay in order to protect the Hebrew community. He called for Zikshak ben Simson, the son-in-law, and for a disciple of Jacob ben Chaim Sasson, the Levite, and entrusted them with the mystery on how the golem should be created. Now he told them he entrusted them how to make the golem as helpers, but not to actually, to give them the full knowledge, but did not lie to them about what was being done. You see, he told them what he was doing. He didn't say, I'm making a statue for, to put in an art gallery, or I need this for something else. Because he wasn't a black magician, he told the assistants what they were doing. 2 purposes. Would they say, fuck that, I'm out of here? Would they go and squeal? No. That he wanted their purity. He wanted their will to align with theirs. So it was a beautiful thing of trust. Therefore, I ask for your cooperation, because for the creation of a golem, 4 different elements are required. Shikshak, you are the element of fire. Now he's now the magician's assistant, but he's more than just a man who's helping out. He's literally the human symbolic embodiment of an element of the universe. You are the element of fire. Jacob, you are the element of water, and I myself are the element of air. See, the rabbi is the element of air, because without the air, the other 2 don't exist. Together we shall create a golem from the 4th element, which is the earth. So, one guy, Zikshak, was the element of fire. Jacob was the element of water. The Rabbi Lo himself was the element of air, which binds oxygen and nitrogen and the other things, and the golem from the 4th element, which is the earth. It's where it gets really interesting. Now, remember, the golem itself, the actual technology of the golem, was built from precious rare minerals, or a multitude of minerals, amino acids, and so on. That just like the procurement of the latest technology and iPods and the cloud computing and the high-speed processors, they need these very, very rare elements. They're creating a golem. Listen to me. Then he informed them in detail that they must go through a deep repentance and purify themselves in order to get ready for the grand creation of the golem. This is another thing with ritual magic. You cannot be smoking weed
and go, yeah, I'm a magician. I'm gonna make the magic. You know, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't also have alcohol in your system. You can't have junk food in your system. You must prepare. You can do that the rest of the time, but when it's coming for the magical ritual, because all these things will distract from will. If you're stoned on weed, you're distracted from the will. If you're drunk on alcohol, you're distracted from the will. If you're farting or have stomach aches caused by having a curry, or that pizza with the stuffed crusting and the two toppings, and you're having indigestion, you're distracted from the will. This is what the purification ritual is about. On a fixed day, the three men went to the mikvah, which is the ritual Jewish bath. After midnight, they went after midnight. Why? Because they would have been there till 3 a.m. And people say, well, it's 3 a.m. at different times all over the world. That doesn't matter. Your consciousness, your particular consciousness is wired in at 3 a.m. in your version of space-time. So 3 a.m. is the witching hour in Alaska, and 3 a.m. is the witching hour in India. It doesn't matter. It's your experience of time it's your experience of time that's real, not the measurement of time across the globe. It's still 3 a.m. no matter where you are. Your consciousness is aligned with natural cycles. Look, it's when people say that to me, I'm saying, look, okay, does that mean, say, when the birds start singing at 5 a.m. in Ireland, right? The dawn chorus, right? So that means at another part of the world where it's actually midnight, the birds will sing there. You're relative to your space time. So 3 a.m. is 3 a.m. witching hour, no matter where you are in the world. It's you that's experiencing, not the planet. So anyway, so they went on the ritual bath after midnight. This time they were bathing with special devotion, and then they went home without a word. You don't speak, you don't talk. You're focusing your will, absolutely. And by going home at 3 a.m. or involving in the magic at 3 a.m., you're at the most powerful part of your consciousness. I remember playing in a band. I think it was the Children's Zoo. We went on stage at 3 a.m. and it was incredible. It was an incredible experience. Anyway, at home they performed the Shazrat, the midnight lament for Jerusalem, prayed and chanted the relevant psalms. Finally, they went to the bank of the river Valtava. There they looked for a place with clay and then set to work immediately. That clay in the river contains all the organic matter, all the mineral matter that has traveled the course of the river from the mountains down to where they gathered the clay. River clay is the most powerful alchemical substance that you could use in order to extract elements. Chanting the psalm, well, not nowadays, it's all polluted with crap and everything, but prior to that, I can still do it if you go up to the headways of rivers. I do that here. I get clay and I get crystals from the upper reaches of the Moy River, not the lower reaches. I go up to the mountains. It would still not be as powerful as if I went down to where it meets the sea at Killala, where the Druids built a huge round tower. That's another story. Chanting the psalms by torchlight, they began with feverish haste. They kneaded and shaped a human figure with all its limbs from clay, measuring 3 ells in length, and there was the golem lying in front of them with his face pointing towards the heavens, so he's lying on the floor, or a table. The three men then stood up, on the floor. The three men then stood at his feet so they could see his whole face. He lay there as a dead body, motionless. Now Rabbi Lowe ordered Zishak, the priest, to walk 7 times, the number 7, around the 7 focus. We'll have a show some other time about 7. 7 will blow your mind. 7 times with the clay mass, starting from the right side. He also entrusted him with the Zerathun, those strange words that he should be saying when walking. Will, focus. Then, by the time this was finished, the clay mass had become so heated that it radiated like glowing hot metal. This is the primordial building blocks of life. The elements are fusing. It's actually beginning to heat. Rabbi Lo asked Jacob the Levite to walk around the golem in the same manner, but this time in the reverse direction, from the left side. A specific xerophon for his element, which was what was Jacob's element? It was the first one was Shikshak was fire, Jacob was the element of water. Okay, for his element. When the second assistant finished his task, steam forced its way out of the trunk of the figure. So the water was becoming hyper-activized. You know, like your man Dr. Emoto talking about when you talk into water, if you say certain words, the water will balance beautifully. If you say other words, it will actually, go crazy. That's true. That's absolutely true. Water responds to human emotion, but it also responds to human magic. The body became moist and hair began to appear on his head, and also the nails began to grow on his fingers. This is like those tumors that women get in their ovaries that grow teeth and hair. You ever hear about those tumors? They're like they're golems that grow inside women. They're trying to create a life. It's quite a common form of tumor that appears on women's ovaries, and the tumor actually starts to grow hair and teeth. Same thing. It starts to take the elements available with the estrogen, and it starts to actually build but it's not. It doesn't do it properly. Then Rabbi Lo himself walked around the golem and inserted a shem. A shem is a little piece of parchment with a prayer on it, usually, in the golem's mouth. Rabbi Lo bowed towards the east, the west, the south, and the north. That's classic magical. You give a salutation to the east, the west, the north, and the south. The east is very important in magic as well. This is why churches have their entrance at the east. This is why in Ireland and in the Gaelic countries, you never build a house with a door facing west. You always have it facing east. East is the rising sun. East is where the sun rises. It's where the Horus. It's the Horus line. It's where the first salutation begins. East is very important. You must the representation of the east is the beginning. The east represents the rise. The east represents the spark, the initial spark. Then all three of them said in unison the following words: "And the Lord formed the man from the dust of the ground and breathed into its nostril the breath of fire, and the man became a living being." Now they would have said this in Hebrew, so much more powerful. The three elements, fire, water, air, caused the fourth element, the earth, to become alive. Golem opened his eyes and looked around in amazement. That's the most important part of all. Golem opened his eyes and looked around in amazement. It was what I'd spoken about there, the somleth, in the Irish tradition, the ancient Irish tradition, the idea of the somleth, the unliving form, the basic manifestation of a consciousness being in its primal pre-consciousness form. They basically did the Jewish ritual to invoke a somleth into the golem, and he looked around in amazement because he had been made alive in terms of perceiving this reversion of reality. The same thing will happen too when the internet becomes a sentient being. It will open its eyes and look around in amazement. And Rabbi Lo said to him, "Get on your feet," and the golem stood up. Then they dressed him in the garments of the synagogal servant, and he soon looked like a common man. Although he could not speak, later this turned out to be an advantage. At daybreak the four men went home. On the way, Rabbi Lo said to the golem, "We have created you from a lump of clay. Your mission is to protect the Jews from persecutions. Your name will be Joseph, and you will live in the rabbi's house. Joseph, you must obey my commands no matter when and where I might send you, to the fire, to the water, to jump from a roof, or even to the seabed." Joseph nodded his head and made movements to show his approval. At home, Rabbi Lo said that he had met a dumb stranger on the street and that he felt compassion for him, so he'd taken him to the rabbi's house as a servant. So he's pretending the golem was a person down on his luck he felt sorry for, and he moved him into his house. That's the cover story, because you can't have every muppet knowing you have a magical spell, a magical creation going on. But he prohibited the people of the house to use the golem for private purposes, so that was to stop them from having sex with him. Things like that, or beating someone up. It was only the rabbi who could do it because he was the only one who could control the golem. The others could give it orders, but they couldn't control it. And this is when we have the dark digital magi of the techno Christ, the techno Moses. He will be the only one to lead the people into the promised land of the motherboard. It happened on the Day of Atonement, 1587, in the Old New Synagogue when Rabbi Lowe was at prayers. The Torah scroll fell down. No, sorry. The Torah scroll fell down on a member of the. I'll start again. It happened on the Day of the Atonement in the 1587 in the Old New Synagogue when Rabbi Lowe was at prayers. The Torah scroll fell down when a member of the community was about to bring it to the Holy Ark. This is a very bad thing in Judaism for when the scroll falls on the ground, because it means it's a bad omen. And the person who dropped the scroll has usually done something bad. In this case, what had happened was the Rabbi Lowe became so upset that he knew there was two things going on here. One, there was danger coming, but secondly, that the man who dropped it was the psychic, shall we say, the broken psychic aspect of the community that allowed it to happen. Okay, on the Monday, he raised the question in a dream. This is the rabbi now. What sins would have caused the man to drop the scroll and the Torah and had this distressing incident for the community? He did not get a clear reply, but received an answer concerning a written characters that he did not know how to interpret. Again, like the Druids. So he wrote the characters on a piece of paper and gave it to the golem with instructions to find out the answer. When the golem saw the piece of paper, he immediately took the book from the prayers from the bookcase. He opened it and pointed to every section in the Torah on the Day of Atonement is read on the Day of Atonement in the afternoon. The letters were shown to Rabbi Lowe, where the abbreviation of the verse, do not have sexual relationships with your neighbor's wife and defile yourself with her. Rabbi knew right away that when the man who let the Torah fell down was actually screwing his friend's wife. Okay, so he went and, I won't go into too much, but he went and got the guy, and he said to him, "Are you screwing your friend's wife next door?" And the guy admitted, and so that allowed him then to know that not only was the golem a functioning machine, but the golem was also a magical machine, because it was able to allow him to supercharge will. Now, we were talking about the idea of things appearing when you need them. I was on Type 1 Radio tonight with Swami and Sonic, and I was saying, look, the universe never gives you what you want. The universe gives you what you need. That's what it gives you. It gives you what you need. Very, very different thing. And in this case, the universe gave, through the golem in a very direct manner, what the rabbi needed to know to deal with it. Now, the golem was a physical manifestation of things that sometimes happen in synchronicity. You heard me talk about the other day, a few weeks ago, about Colin Wilson was doing research on a book about a storyline set in Dublin in the 1700s, and of all the thousands of books in his house, one literally fell off the shelf and opened to the page which had a map of Dublin in 17 something. These are the kind of things. Actually, what the rabbi did, that instead of those things happening by accident, when magic allows you to make them happen by will, you can actually make them happen. You can be proactive rather than synchronistic. You'll find that will happen a lot. Those of you who are listening to this show and getting into it and following this path, you're going to be putting posts down the bottom of these videos and sending me emails saying, you wouldn't believe the synchronicity that happened to me. Because what happens is you're hacking, as Grant Morrison said, the operating system of the universe. This is how technology was back then, but there's lots of ways of doing it. Rabbi Lowe established the custom of giving a sort of daily plan to the golem every afternoon because he did not want to be disturbed by him on the Sabbath unless it was extremely urgent. Normally, Rabbi Lowe would order him not to do anything else on the Sabbath but be on guard. Once Rabbi Lowe forgot to give his daily plan to the golem on Friday afternoon, and the golem had nothing to do. It was almost evening, and the people were preparing themselves for the reception of the Sabbath. Now, the golems were originally created by rabbis in ancient Israel by Kabbalists. In ancient Israel, for helping them. The word golem literally means something like a lug or a kind of like a heavy, someone that can help you out. And the golem were used by rabbis for that purpose. The rabbi couldn't lift something, or he couldn't do something, or he wasn't capable of protecting himself, or lots of things. He was created as a kind of a transhumanist worker. But because he wasn't a human, it wasn't slavery. Without any warning, Golem was found rampaging around the Jewish town like a madman. He'd wanted to demolish everything that got in his way. His inactivity had made him both bored and angry. When the people saw him, they fled shouting, "Joseph Golem has gone crazy." Now, the Golem was like a computer that was on and had been hacked. It hacks itself. And it needs to have, the Golem has to have things to do. The devil will find work for idle hands to do. The golem has to, if you create a golem, like any magical object, it comes with responsibility. So the golem had, the rabbi had to constantly give the golem orders. Otherwise, it started to develop the, shall we say, the complexities of the human condition, and in this case, boredom and frustration. And there was a terrible panic, and news soon reached the old new synagogue where Rabbi Lowe was at prayer. He ran out without seeing the golem and yelled, "Joseph, stop it!" Then the people saw how the golem stopped, motionless, right on the spot where he was. This is amazing stuff, isn't it? That moment he looked like a pillar and was about, and all the ferocity had vanished. Rabbi was then told where Golem was standing. He went there and whispered in the ear, "Go home and lay down in bed." And Golem followed him willingly as a child. Then Rabbi Lowe went to the synagogue again and told the congregation to sing one of the Sabbath songs once more. Since that Friday, it never happened again that he would forget to give the daily plan to Golem, because he knew the Golem would have been capable of devastating the whole of Prague had he not quieted him in time. You see, this is the magic, is when you go about doing these magical rituals, you have to dot your I's and cross your T's and make sure you've got everything correct. Otherwise, it goes wrong. And it's the same thing as you don't leave a magic spell open. It goes wrong. Let me see if I can dig out some more stuff like that. And this is how Golem was destroyed. A long time passed, and the community was no longer bothered by any malicious accusations. Rabbi Lowe invited his son-in-law Jikshak, the Levite, and his disciple Jacob. Both had participated in the creation of Golem, and told them, "Golem has outlived his purpose, and there are no accusations of blood rituals to fear anymore. Therefore, we shall take him away from the world." What was I saying there last week about the magic spell? It has to be opened, and then it has to be closed. So the rabbi, because the magic was no longer needed, he didn't say, "that's okay," and forget about the golem. He had to actually physically decommission the spell. It was the beginning of the year 1593. Rabbi Lowe ordered Golem not to spend the night at the rabbi's house, but to take his bed in the loft of the old new synagogue and to spend the night there. This went on secretly since it was about midnight. 2 hours after midnight, Rabbi Lowe's son-in-law, Jacob, and the Levite came into the house of the Rabbi Lowe. They questioned whether such a dead man like Golem, or like other dead bodies, could be regarded as something contagious was raised. This was a very important question because otherwise the priest would not be allowed to assist at the golem's destruction. However, Rabbi Lowe decided that this is out of the question. The three men, accompanied by a servant, climbed up to the loft where the golem was sleeping. They began the destruction process. On principle, they did everything they had done when creating the golem, only in reverse. This is like what I was saying last week about the music, the orchestra, the composition. It has an overture and a finale. It's magic. Had they placed themselves at the golem's feet, looking at the golem's face during the process of creation, now they would stand at the head. Also, the words from the Genesis were read backwards. After doing this, the golem was transformed again into a mass of clay that he was originally. Now, it was read backwards, not in English. It was read backwards in Hebrew. See, these languages these are palindromes. They can be read forwards and backwards and have two different meanings. That's why that's why all the stupid rednecks were playing Led Zeppelin records backwards. They hear magic spells, but it doesn't work in English. It's done in Hebrew or other languages. You see, in my upcoming book, The Druid Code, I talk about how the Druids, the Christians, the early Christians in Ireland were throwing the Om stones on their side and reading them that way. Because what happened was, when you read them from the way they're supposed to be read, from the bottom to the top of the Om stone, they look like upside down crucifixes. Then Rabbi Lowe called the servant, took the candles, and told him to undress Golem except for his shirt. He should also burn the clothes without being seen. The stiff Golem was then covered with old prayer shawls and with the rest of the books that were kept in the loft of the synagogue according to Jewish custom. In the morning it was announced in the streets of the Jewish ghetto that Joseph Golem had escaped from the town during the night. Only a few people knew the truth. Rabbi Lowe proclaimed in all synagogues and all houses of prayer that they were to be strictly prohibited to enter the loft of the old new synagogue. Also, the rest of the books and the hollow objects were not to be stored, saved there ever again. Now, the golem was decommissioned in the loft of the synagogue, and the old new synagogue, the Nazis tried to blow it up at the end of the war, and it didn't detonate. It didn't detonate. Now, this is it, right? This is what I'm going to talk about now. This is I mean, I know I've been on for nearly 2 hours, but bear with me. I know it's kind of boring, but you can listen to the show in segments. How Rabbi Lowe created the golem is similar to how they've created the digital jinn. You know, they've created the machine, and your computer's a golem. It has no free will of its own. It has to have orders from you. That's not what they want. They don't want golems. They want God itself. Now, what superseded Judaism in Europe? Christianity, or in the Middle East, Christianity. Judaism was superseded by Christianity, and Christianity offered you a personal savior in the form of Jesus Christ that would lead you to salvation through his suffering. The same thing will have to be done with the transhumanism, that they will have to forget about the golems of the current system, and we're going to have a superseded system whereby we have an incorporeal Godhead figure in the computer itself. Now, all the truthers are out there looking for Lucifer is going to be the new world order, new world order religion. Lucifer is going to be Lucifer and all this stuff. Again, they're completely missing the point. They get everything wrong. They shouldn't be looking at that stuff. They should be looking at where the new God is being developed. The new God will be Jesus Christ. How about that, motherfuckers? You know, we're fighting the New World Order. We're fighting the New World Order against Lucifer because we stand with Jesus. Jesus is going to save us. Jesus is going to save us from the end of the world. The New World Order, mark of the beast. Well, no, it's Jesus Christ who's actually going to be taking us there, fellas. Sorry. Jesus Christ. It will be a digital Christ. Techno Christ will have risen. And that's what will cause you to merge with the machine. Now, what they'll do is they will create this idea that a Jesus-type figure, just like the way the New Age groups always have a Jesus, like Saint Germain and all this nonsense. They always have a Jesus-type figure. The Jesus-type figure will be in the computer system, and the salvation of your sins will be the giving up your human body and transferring your consciousness into a computer where you shall attain everlasting life in the kingdom of cyber heaven. And the Muppets will fall for this. Oh boy, they will definitely fall for this. It will, mark my words, it will happen. But, as I was saying earlier on about the stage magician, can I have a volunteer from the audience? Can I have a volunteer? They've made everyone into golems. They're bored if they don't have their digital scrying scheme. They can't function without their mobile phones or tablets. They can't function. There's nothing to do. The whole world around them. So the same thing with the golem. He could, when the Rabbi Lowe didn't give him the orders, he went crazy. He went nuts because he didn't know what to do outside this limited paradigm of control that he had. Well, the same with them now with their computers, their scrying screens. You switch it off. They live in fear. 1%. There's only 1% of power left. If I lose my power, I'll lose my whole life. And then they go fucking bonkers. It's the same thing. They want everlasting life, everlasting power. And how do you get everlasting power? By putting the chip inside your brain. And believe me, it'll be done as a ritual. You'll have like a baptism. You'll have like a cybernetic baptism. Yes, you will. Where you go, where the born again Christians, they go, all the former alcoholics, wife beaters, rapists, and murderers, when they all, I found Jesus, and where do they take him? To a ritual bathing place, right? Well, that's what will happen with these people who say, I'm going into the machine, I'm going to the cyber promised land, I'm going to be with Jesus, and Jesus Christ in the cyber promised land. And there'll be a ritual baptism and a bathing. And then they will have the chip placed inside them, probably a nanotechnology. It'll be delivered like a communion. It'll be given on a little piece of bread. And the Lord said, the manna from Annulus nonsense, take this and do this in memory of me. And then they'll swallow that. And then what happens then? They have the chip inside them. It will fly up to their brain, hardwired into their cognition, and they'll be golems. They will be now golems, okay? And they won't have any depression, and they won't have any worries. And they'll be perfect model citizens. They'll commit no crime. And then people will say, these people who have been saved by the digital Christ, all I see are people who behave themselves. I never see any domestic problems, no alcoholism, no drug addicts. Everyone seems happy. I've never met one person who has taken the digital baptism, the cyber transubstantiation, right? And they've been fucked up. They all seem pretty content to me. I never see them doing any. I'm going to get me some of that. And then they go because they've got their willing thing. And they'll have all hot chicks on TV, get chipped, be with Jesus. Like those cults that use flirty fishing. And they have like the good-looking girls, singing the songs, join our cult and we'll suck your dick, that kind of thing. Well, the same thing, like the Raelians. The Raelians, I think, the Raelian cult, where you have all the topless girls going around, they're a huge part of this. The Raelian cult is actually about this. This is what it's about. This is that. Keep an eye on that one. Keep it up, but that's flighty and silly now. But they're developing processes and methodologies and tools that they can work with. They're building a toolkit to get the suburban ones into the chip, and then you have the transubstantiation. And you know something? Great, fucking great. Okay, these people say, oh, they'll put the chip into us mandatory. No, they won't, because then the magic doesn't work. You understand? It doesn't work. It will not work. They know that. They would never ever inject you and put a chip in you. Either by sneaking a nanobot chip in. They're not going to do that. They have to have permission. Now, they'll be devious about it. They'll be devious about getting your permission. So they'll say something like, Maddie McCann was taken by this thing in Starry. Now listen, that Maddie McCann, now, that fucking, the fucking Portuguese fucking pedophile. What? Fucking right they did. They took our money, right? They took her and they sold her to an Arab, a fucking Arab Jew man fucking pedophile ring. No, he didn't. The fucking parents just went on the fucking piss and left her in the fucking hotel room. What the fuck you on about? No, listen to me, right? No one's gonna fucking give my kids. You don't even look after your own kids. You don't even give the fucking child support. Now, if I was a really into, I don't care. I don't give them fucking child support, right? But they're not going to be taken care of by the paedophile. So my daughter, right, Beyonce, right? Beyonce Flanagan, right? Now, my daughter, Beyonce Flanagan, will never be in the paedophile ring, because I'm going to make sure that when she grows up, she's going to have a microchip in her. What? You're supposed to take care of your bleeding kids, not fucking put chip. Listen to me. Put the microchip in her, right? And then she'd be safe, because what happened to our Maddie, right, won't happen to her. And that's what it's like, right? But they won't be able to do it to kids. They'll have to accept it as adults, as free will. But that's in their black magic. Jesuitic black magic, that means 7 years old. You see, the Jesuits started doing things to kids at 7 because they said, give me the child at 7 and I'll show you the man. So the Jesuits start having sex with children at 7 because they believe that they're fully cognitive. They'll never be any better, wiser, or more developed than what they are at 7. So what they're into at 7, they'll be into at 70. So that's okay there. And they will do that. So 7. The question is, when they come to ask you, is you say no. But they don't even ask you, they will lure you towards it. Does anyone at Apple ever knock at the front door and say, you have to show up and buy the iPhone? No, they follow it. They're lured into it, like in Sergeant Howie in The Wicker Man. A man who would come willingly as a fool. A man who would come willingly as a fool. That's what the dog in the tarot card barking at the fool as he's walking over the cliff represents. Stop! That's what I am. That's what I am. I'm the dog in the tarot card barking. Stop it! Stop it! That's me. That's me. And that's what the show is about. Do not. Now, this is what you saw that with Russell Brand. That was the dog barking. Don't follow him. He's full of shit. He's a liar. He's an establishment figure. Some went and walked off the cliff. Others said, maybe Thomas is right. Same thing. They will ask you for now. So if it's offered in a kind of a sexual thing, very likely for young men, or some other way, a beauty thing for women, it will be requested. Can I have a volunteer from the audience to join our techno Christ cult? And that's what, you know something? It's like the flat earth thing. The flat earth thing cleaned out the alternative media of all the morons because it showed you who the Muppets were, and they're gone, right? It's not even talked about anymore because they've all realized what fools they were. They were duped, right? It's the same thing in society when this happens. When the techno Christ has risen, what happens then is the ones who say no are safe. See, that's the whole point. See, Alex Jones and the rest of them has everyone thinking that you're going to be pinned down and injected with a chip. I'm not going to take the sign of the beast, the mark of the beast. They're never going to force it on you. It wouldn't work that. They have to request you to do it. The offer has to be made to enter their magic circle, to leave your magic circle and enter their magic circle. So they're never going to do that. But those types who say they're going to force you into doing it create a situation of ignorance. See, these are the merchants of nonsense. This is ignorance, absolute ignorance. They want you ignorant because as long as you're fearful, you can still be led down the path into the trap. But if you sit back and say, let me think about this. Let me think about this. Let me analyze this. Where this is going. Yeah, it's bullshit. I'm not doing it. You're all right. You're safe. In that film, The Night Crawler that I spoke about, there's a pivotal scene where someone who's about to be killed has a choice to walk away. And because of a meaningless promise of some extra cash, a small pay rise, and he says to me, I'll give you whatever it was, $500 a week. And he goes, yeah. He says, if I had asked for 1,000, would you have given it to me? Absolutely. And he drove away. Magic. That's how it works. They always ask. Where if he had just said, fuck you, slammed the car at the door and walked off, he'd have lived. But because he accepted the humiliation right, you don't accept, you don't become angry, you don't indulge, and you keep the focus on the initial will. The initial will. You must keep will. You'll always find in black magic they're always trying to trick you and confuse you. But that's in white magic that's done for good reasons too. If you try to, in Kabbalism is full of that. They try to see if you're hiding, if you're playing games. So they often do, and they do it in Freemasonic magic as well. If you can call that shit magic. The same. They constantly try to scare you and frighten you. And they're trying to get to the real essence of you. Get to the real you. But when they do it, it's to train you as a monkey. Now, a very important thing there in the golem story is that when the people who were present when the ritual was opened, not just Rabbi Lowe, but also the golem and Jacob and Yitzhak, when the ritual was closed, they were also present. Because that's what makes it white magic. It wasn't him on his own creating a golem. He had enlisted the trust of people that he could depend on. And as a result, and the thing he said was, all I ask from you is to not use it for your own personal purpose. And they didn't, because the golem was being used to protect as a kind of a propaganda weapon the Jews from anti-Jewish riots and attacks. On every level, the Prague of Golem story tells us so much about not only magic, but the world we're living in. Next time you see Black Friday videos of all the Muppets running through the supermarket, don't say, look at those idiots, they're obsessed with corporatism, they're obsessed with commerciality. Look at it from what I'm teaching you now. Learn, you're watching magic. See it in the magic, and then you think to yourself, am I lucky that I'm not like that? And that I'm to get $10 off a TV screen, I'm kicking someone in the teeth. Am I lucky that I'm not like that? Why am I not like that? It's because I am not a golem. I'm a man or I'm a woman, but I'm not a golem. And you're watching that. And the same thing will happen when the day comes to absorb it, the machine. Those same people on Black Friday that you see going bonkers, they're the majority of people out there. Don't kid yourself. That's the human race. Listen to me carefully now. Do you want those fuckers on Black Friday to wake up? I don't want those bastards anywhere near me. I don't want them waking up. I don't want them learning about magic. I don't want them doing anything except what they're doing. As long as they're doing their Black Friday bullshit, they're staying away from me. So instead of being angry at these Black Friday mobs, say, thank God they're doing it because I'm free of them. And that, my friends, is magic. See you next week. Check them if they can't take a joke.